So again, good evening, and thank you for joining again. And again, we start as usual with quieting our mind by watching the breath mindfully. Then we can try to generate good intention by thinking, may us here coming together, listening to the Dharma, and trying to reflect, contemplate, and engage in discussions. May all of this become cause and conditions for our mind to be ripened, to have the correct understanding of three principal aspects of the path, and to generate the realizations. Having generated realizations, may we be able to obtain fully awakened state, so we can liberate each and every sentient beings from all their suffering and cause of suffering, and to guide them to ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment. Everything that we do through our three doors, body, speech, and mind, until we achieve enlightenment state, especially this life, this year, this month, this week, especially today, all of them become cause and condition to enlightenment. May all of them become cause and condition to help and benefit other sentient beings. And may we never hurt and harm intentionally to any sentient beings. Okay. I go for, I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create a relation to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodam Soke Sonam Chanchu Bado Dane Lagi Shushe Ve Sonam Lola Penche Sangye Loba Sangye Chodam Soke Sonam Chanchu Bado Dane Lagi Shushe Ve Sonam Lola Penche Sangye Loba. So I think today is the 4th week of our 6th week on this very special text by Lama Tsongkhapa on 3 principal aspects of the path. And I think last week we just finished the first principal aspect of the path, the renunciations. And today we are on the second principal aspect of the path, the awakening mind of the Bodhicitta, or the mind of enlightenment of the Bodhicitta. So again, within that, why we need to cultivate this Bodhicitta mind, and then how to cultivate the Bodhicitta mind, and the measurement or definition of having cultivated the Bodhicitta mind. So from the 3 point of view, that Lama Tsongkhapa will discuss. In the first, why we need to cultivate the Bodhicitta mind, why it is necessary. Isn't cultivating the renunciation enough? By cultivating the renunciation, wouldn't that be enough? Why we need to cultivate the Bodhicitta mind? Why it is important? So with that, then we go to the verse number 6. So that is where you can see, even if renunciation have been developed, so through the practice, as mentioned before, through the practice of human rebirth, death impermanent, meditation on karma, and meditation on the faults or shortcoming of the samsara, or nature, suffering nature of samsara. Through that meditation, even though we are able to develop the renunciations, even we have developed the renunciation, if it does not become the cause of perfect bliss of unsurprised enlightenment, so the fully enlightenment, the Buddhahood. So it will not become, if one have not, I think I missed one word after that. If it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become a cause of the perfect bliss of unsurprised enlightenment. So if Bodhicitta is not cultivated, and that renunciation is not being supported and motivated by the Bodhicitta mind, then whatever virtues we engage into, that virtue will not become cause of fully enlightenment. Therefore, the wise, who can differentiate and see what are the benefits and what are the advantages and disadvantages, all of that, who have the wisdom mind to analyze that, those wise one generate the supreme mind of the enlightenment. And therefore, why we should cultivate the Bodhicitta mind. So again, if we have not cultivated the Bodhicitta mind, or if our practice, whatever practice we engage into, if it is not motivated by the Bodhicitta mind, then even you engage into a, virtues such as, feeding all human beings in this world, practicing the charity, generosity, feeding the whole human being, whole animal in this world every day for all their life. Even all these virtues, all this practice of generosity does not become cause of enlightenment. because that practice is not motivated by the bodhicitta mind. On the other hand, with the bodhicitta motivations, if you feed one insect with one grain or one drop of water, then that act, that virtues, that practice become cause of enlightenment. That become cause of enlightenment. And so therefore, why we need to generate the bodhicitta mind if we want to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of oneself and all sentient beings. If we want to fulfill well-being of oneself and others, we need to achieve enlightenment. And to achieve enlightenment, we need to create cause and conditions to achieve enlightenment. And in order to our whatever practice, whatever meditation, whatever virtues we engage into, small, big, whether it become cause of enlightenment or not, it depends on whether that virtues is being motivated by the bodhicitta mind, whether that virtue is being supported by the bodhicitta mind or not. So that without the bodhicitta mind, even you have the wisdom realizing emptiness directly, even you have a, incredible meditative concentrations that where you can meditate deeply without being distracted, disturbed for days, weeks. Even you have clairvoyance, even you have many others, even you can levitate and whatever, all kind of different other practice, virtue you can have, but all of them would not be cause of enlightenment unless it is being motivated by the bodhicitta mind. With the renunciation, with the motivation by renunciations, it can become cause, it will become cause to individual liberations, but it will not become cause to enlightenment, fully enlightenment. And therefore, that is why we need also, to fulfill the well-being of others and oneself, as well as to achieve enlightenment. We need to create a lot of merit, a lot of virtues, We need a lot of virtues, we need a lot of merit. And there is nothing more powerful to create the merit than cultivate the bodhicitta mind. That is, if we can generate the bodhicitta mind, then even small virtues we engage into with the motivation of that bodhicitta mind, you create incredible amount of merit. As Shantideva said, for example, if you wish someone, someone who is sick, whatever sickness, maybe someone is having fever, headache, you sincerely wish that person to be relief of that sickness. You have that virtuous mind. And because you have that compassion and virtuous mind, you create merit. Virtues, you create one virtues, one merit. Imagine if you have that kind of virtuous mind towards each and every sentient beings. You create as that amount of sentient beings. So it is countless sentient beings. By having that thought, all sentient beings to be free from headache, you create virtues or merit as equal of that numberless sentient beings. Then imagine when you not only wish them to be free from one suffering, one pain, but when you sincerely, from the depth of your heart, when you wish them to be free from all the sufferings, every suffering, and the cause of every suffering, then how much virtues and merit you create in one moment. Not only that, if you wish someone to be success, when you have sincerely wish someone to have a success, happiness, you create virtuous merit. And imagine when you wish each and every sentient beings to have happiness, not only just one happiness, but all the happiness, and especially the ultimate happiness, then you create incredible amount of merit. That is what bodhicitta is. So when you have that bodhicitta with one moment, that is how much you create virtues. And also, it is also very powerful through also for success of ourselves, others, for the well-being of oneself and others, as well as to achieve enlightenment. We need to purify all the obstacles. And one of the most powerful way to purify is again cultivating the bodhicitta mind. Is the bodhicitta mind. Therefore, Katamba masters says, if you want to purify, practice bodhicitta. If you want to accumulate merit, practice bodhicitta. If you wish happiness for yourself, practice bodhicitta. If you wish happiness for others, practice bodhicitta. If you want to have temporary happiness while you are samsara, practice bodhicitta. If you want to have ultimate happiness that is free from the samsara, practice the bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the key, of course, to achieve enlightenment, all three principal aspects of the path, but particularly the bodhicitta mind, especially the bodhicitta mind. That is the unique cause of enlightenment, fully enlightened. Wisdom and renunciation is kind of, common or shared. Both arhat also they develop, even those who doesn't aspire for fully enlightenment, just individual liberation, also they cultivate the renunciation and wisdom. So that is kind of common practice, both for Mahayana and non-Mahayana. But the unique practice of the Bodhisattva, uncommon and unique practice of the Bodhisattva, is the bodhicitta mind. If you want to, don't we all want quick and easy path to enlightenment? Yeah? Who doesn't want that? Isn't a quick and easy path? I definitely want that. If there is one. So once, Adisha was asking, he was contemplating and asking and praying, to find what is the easiest, what is the quickest way to enlightenment. And the answer he got from the Tara is cultivate the bodhicitta mind. But bodhicitta mind, the practice of bodhicitta is the easiest and quickest way to enlightenment. And that is when Adisha, then he totally dedicated his life towards cultivating that rest of his life. And you can see why it is. You can see why it is the quick and easy path to enlightenment. Because, you create merit so quickly by the power of that. So of course, then the enlightenment comes quickly, faster, because you are creating the cause, so great amount of the cause at each moment. And because you are able to purify so each moment so strongly. So therefore, that is why, that is why Adisha, he got this advice. The quick and easy path, the quick and easy way to enlightenment is cultivate the bodhicitta mind. And that is the Kadamba master's main practice is the bodhicitta. That is the main practice of the bodhicitta. That emphasize the focus of their practice in the bodhicitta. That is where all Lojong and Lamrim, all of them come, which the heart of Lojong, the heart of the Lamrim is the bodhicitta. All other practice, some of them are as a preliminary practice for the bodhicitta. The small scope and middle scope practice are as a preliminary to the bodhicitta mind. And the practice of 6 perfections is like the precept or the commitments of the bodhicitta. So the core, the heart of all this practice is the bodhicitta. And that is all of those tantric practice that are supposed to be kind of, very profound and quick, easy way to enlightenment. There are only easy way and quick way and profound. Only you have, if only you have bodhicitta. If you don't have bodhicitta, those practices are not profound. Those practices are not, as profound as as it is explained. Those practices are profound and easy and quick way because they are built on the foundation of bodhicitta mind. On the basis that you have foundations of bodhicitta mind, on the basis of that, if you practice, then that is how it becomes. So therefore, bodhicitta is the key, And so that is why we need to cultivate the bodhicitta mind. So that is where I think we just finished verse number 6. Okay, why we need to cultivate the bodhicitta mind. Now, next one is how to cultivate the bodhicitta mind. The practice itself. Okay. So in terms of cultivating the bodhicitta mind, again, most of you, know, that in all the Lamrims and all others, Lojongs and all others, scriptures, you see mainly 2 different meditations, how to cultivate the bodhicitta mind, One is known as 7 point of cause and effect, that was kind of passed through Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya to Asanga, and through that to Adisha, and through Adisha through all Kadamba masters in our lineage to Lam Tsongkhapa, and from our gurus, That is one method. Another method, equalizing and exchanging self with others. There's another method of practice meditation to cultivate the bodhicitta mind. And that method is passed to Buddha Shakyamuni, to Manjushri, to Nagarjuna, and eventually Shantideva, So you find in his writing most details of that practice. And then, again, through Shantideva, then to Adisha, from Adisha, then Lam Tsongkhapa, and through that lineage to our gurus. So those are 2 main and then Lama Tsongkhapa in his Lamrim, stages of the path, then he combined those 2 methods together, and also then you can, if you can combine those 2 methods, then it becomes even more powerful when you try to. But whatever method you use, it is mentioned, you can use any of those meditations, practice method, whichever suit you most, and by following any of those methods, one can cultivate bodhicitta mind, So, but So we have to find out which particular method is more effective and more suitable to ourselves. And whatever method we find more suitable and effective ourselves, then we try to kind of keep on using that as our foundations for our practice meditation to cultivate the bodhicitta mind, So yeah, so here, Lama Tsongkhapa explains in three principal aspects of path. It seems that he's explaining the 7 point of cause and effect without going details, without going to details, thinking about how all mother sentient beings, so when you talk about all sentient beings as being mother sentient beings, then it comes through the method of 7 point of cause and effect, So here he describes how imagining or visualizing how mother sentient beings are suffering. And so by contemplating with that kind of image of how mother sentient beings are suffering and in that pain, then you understand their suffering and you feel their pain and suffering. And then through that understanding their pain and suffering and feeling unbearable, and through that, then you cultivate strong compassion to each and every sentient beings. And then, having cultivated a strong compassions, then, out of that compassion, then you develop the, special attitude or universal responsibility, and out of that, then you generate the bodhicitta mind. Induced by that, and you generate bodhicitta. So that is the main. So maybe I can read that one. Yeah. So in that there is 2 verses. Verse number 7 and 8. Swept away by the current of 4 powerful rivers. So you can think, like all mother sentient beings are by without any power, without power. There's someone who is being swept away by a big river, Similarly here, by 4 powerful rivers, not just one river, 4 powerful rivers, without them having any control, sentient beings completely run. And those 4 powerful rivers are, the powerful river of, samsaric birth, sickness, aging, and death, So we are constantly being swept away by those powerful rivers, all sentient beings, And then tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo. So imagine if someone is being kind of swept away by the river, powerful river, if their hand is not tied, they can swim, and maybe they might be able to save themselves. They might be able to swim against the current of the strong river, and they might be able to go to the shore, and they might be able to save themselves. But if they are tied, not only they are tied, if it is being tied by a fragile rope, they can break it. There is possible they can break it. But if they have been tied by a very difficult to undo, like a metal chain, if someone is being tied, their hands and feet being tied by the metal chain, then it is very difficult to undo. And here it is being tied, very difficult to undo by the karma. Swept away by the power of those powerful river of the sufferings of birth, sickness, aging, and death, not only they are swept by the river of the sufferings, but then they are being tied by the karma. And that is worse. If you are not being tied by the karma, you could free from the suffering you might be able to free from the being swept away by the suffering, river of the sufferings, you know. But when you are being tied by the karma, then it makes much more difficult, you know, because when you are tied by the karma, we continue to create more negative karma all the time, you know. That makes difficult because with the previous karma, we can experience it and we can kind of free from that. If we don't have karma to experience new one, but the problem is, you know, we continue to create so much new karma, So therefore, you know, while you are experiencing the suffering, at the same time, you are continue to create more karma, new cause for more suffering in the futures. So it's very painful. So then when you see that it is endless, the suffering seems endless. You know, caught in the iron net of the self-graspings, you know. Even you are tied, even you have been tied, even your hands are tied, you know, if you are tied, but if you are free, again, somehow you might be able to manage, you know, even despite difficulty, but you might be still able to protect yourself, save yourself. But then if you are, you know, not only tied, but you are caught in the cage or the iron net, you know, then there is nothing you can do, you know. Your hands are tied and now it's like a fish, you know, sometimes you see fish, helpless fish when they are in the net, you know, nothing they can do, you know. Similarly, you know, sentient beings, of course, we all sentient beings are not only tied by the karma, which is difficult to undo, but then we are caught in the iron net or the cage of the self-grasping ignorance. So, you know, by the self-grasping ignorance and other delusions such as anger, attachment, jealousy, pride that come through that ignorance. So we are caught by the iron cage or net of those afflictive emotions, you know, those afflictive emotions, which make even more difficult to free, which make even more difficult to free themselves. The sentient beings, you know, they are suffering, they are tied by the karma, and then not only they are tied by the karma, they are being caught under the iron cage or iron net of the afflictive emotions. You know, if there is no afflictive emotions, then again, there is some hope to clear the karma, you know, to clear the karmas, to purify the karmas, and to clear the karma. But when you have afflictive emotions, you clear one karma, and again, you create new karma. You purify the previous karma, and again, you create new karma. And that is endless, tiring. And that is why, you know, sometimes we wonder, you know, oh, I have been doing purification so much. How come, you know, still I'm not purified? And they are supposed to purify all of them. Well, have you stopped creating any negative karma? Even my purification have been very powerful, and even I have purified all the negative karma that I've created from the past. But if I have delusion, 24 hours, I continue to create so much negative karma. So many new negative karma. So that is why until we are free from all the delusions, we need to do purifications all the time, regardless. until you stop creating any new negative karma. As long as we have delusion, we will continue to create, And so that is how sentient. This is the sentient being, all sentient being situations. This is all sentient being situations. Painful situations. This is the situations, conditions of all painful conditions of the sentient beings. When you really reflect, when you really think, take time to really think with each of those points Lama Tsongkhapa make, it's so painful, it's yeah, it's so painful to see, sentient beings in that kind of painful situation, conditions, And then, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, So while you have been swept away by those rivers, tied and in iron net, if it is a daytime, if there's a light, there's hope that somebody might see you being swept away. They might come to help. There's some hope. You might be able to shout, ask for help. People can see you and they might come and try to help you. But it's totally darkness. Nobody see you. Even if you try to shout, nobody can see you where you are, what is happening. So it becomes almost like hopeless, almost like no way to free yourself, no way to free yourself from being swept away. Similarly, not only we have been the sentient beings are being caught up in the iron net, or cage of the delusions, but they are in total darkness. They are in total darkness of the ignorance, total darkness of that ignorance, the fundamental ignorance. That is the root of all the delusions. That is the root of all the samsara, all the sufferings. So again, if there's no ignorance, again, it is much easier to overcome the delusions. But when the fundamental ignorance is there, even you overcome the delusion, but it comes back later. It's like cutting the branch, The tree is bothering you. You cut the branch, it solved the problem, but again, it grows next year. Again, you cut it, again, next year, it comes. Until you cut the very root of that tree. And so, as long as the ignorance is there, we can apply, for example, different meditation. We can apply different meditation to overcome some of the delusions, by loving kindness, compassions, we might be able to kind of, overcome certain level of anger, hatred, But again, we cannot get rid of all the very subtle anger and hatred until we get rid of the ignorance. And same with all other practice, through meditations on, impermanent and so forth, we can overcome, attachments, certain level of attachment and all others. But until we overcome that fundamental ignorance, we cannot get rid of the very subtle attachments, some of the subtle attachments. We can have a very single-pointed meditation, shamatha, samadhi, through that kind of meditations, we can stop those delusions from manifesting, but they are still there, still there. When we are not in deep meditations and we meet the cause, then again, delusion arises. It will not only arise when you are in that deep meditation, but when we are not deep meditation, again, when we encounter certain cause and condition, delusion can arise. So in order to overcome completely all of them permanently, then we need to cut the very root of all of them. That is the fundamental darkness of the ignorance. And so when you see that, then, it really, feel, to see that conditions of sentient beings, then, if you really reflect, contemplate, and realize that, and there's no way that we wouldn't feel for them, we wouldn't feel for them, So that is where, and because of that delusion and fundamental ignorance, then endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. And the sentient beings are reborn again and again, endlessly in samsara, cyclic existence. They have taken rebirth countless times, and until they get rid of the delusion and the fundamental ignorance, they will continue to take endlessly. So what happens if they take endlessly, rebirth in the samsara or cyclic existence? What is the problem? If they take samsara and then ceaselessly, if they take rebirth in samsara, then what happens is ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. So if they take rebirth in the samsara, then ceaselessly, day and night, they will be experiencing, or they will be tormented by one of the three suffering all the time. Sometimes they are tormented by three sufferings simultaneously, sometimes two suffering, but definitely one suffering 24 hours, 7 days a week. If we just take our rebirth as a human beings, sometimes we have suffering of, so those three suffering are suffering of pain, suffering of change, suffering of all pervasive. So sometimes we experience suffering of pain. Yeah, we all experience sometimes. Sometimes, we have physical pain. Sometimes we have emotional pains, all those pains. We all know that is pain and sufferings. And we all try to avoid that. We all try to release from that in whatever way that we can. Not only we, even the animal recognize that as a suffering, and even they try to avoid that. Isn't it? Even the animal knows, they know those are pain, undesirable, painful sufferings. So, even in their own way, whatever they have method, they try to avoid them. They try to relieve from that pain and suffering. So that's one suffering. But we don't experience that suffering 24 hours, 7 days, as in our life. Sometimes we have those kind of suffering or pain. Sometimes we don't have that. And when we don't have that suffering or pain, that is when we feel like our lives not bad. Isn't it? When we have suffering or pain, we feel like life is miserable. Samsara, But when we don't have suffering or pain, then we think, well, samsara not too bad. I don't mind being samsara if it's like that. I don't mind coming in samsara again and again, being born again and again, if I don't have suffering suffering of the pain, I'm okay with that. That is how sometimes how we might feel, and that is why we have, different feeling about samsara, depending on whether we are experiencing the suffering of pain or whether we are not experiencing the suffering of pain. Sometimes samsara doesn't seem so bad. Sometimes samsara feels really miserable, unbearable. So we know that suffering of pain we don't experience all the time. Then suffering of change, we experience a lot of time. Again, we might not experience that all the time, but we experience that a lot of time. We experience that more than the suffering of change. I mean, suffering of pain. And suffering of change is, when we experience samsaric pleasure, contaminated pleasure. Contaminated pleasure is the result of, contaminated karma, you know. And the nature of contaminated pleasure is that they are unstable, unreliable, you know. A lot of those samsaric pleasure or samsaric happiness, what we call happiness, which are kind of contaminated experience or pleasure and samsaric pleasure, many of them, they turn into this. At the very beginning, there is some joyfulness, there is some kind of pleasant feeling, but many of them, after some time, they turn into a pain. Many of those experiences, after some time, they turn into the pain. Isn't it? For example, you are served your most favorite delicious dishes, and you overeat it, and then it turns into the pain. Isn't it? At the very beginning, it was enjoyable. You like it. That is happiness, our samsaric happiness. That is one of our samsaric happiness. And because it's so delicious, it's so your favorite, because you are getting that after some time, and then you overeat it, and then now what happens? Pain. You know, you know. Then that turn into sufferings. And that happens with many of our samsaric happiness. As example I give, is like a bitter medicine that is being sweet coated, outside. You experience the sweet at the very beginning, and then which you like it, and then after some time you experience the bitterness, which you don't like it. And that is how it is. It changed from sweet to the bitterness. And that is where it changed from happiness to suffering. To begin with, it is not real happiness. It's not real true happiness to begin with. To begin with, it's a suffering, but it is bitter, but it's just being coated with a sugar, sweet. And not realizing that we think it is sweet. Not realizing that we think it is sweet, then, and later when it becomes bitter, then we get disappointed. We get disappointed, unhappy, miserable, So sometimes it turns into the pain. Sometimes it even doesn't turn in the pain, sometimes it leads to the kind of disappointment after some time. And no matter how those good experience, they never last. They never last. They never last. And so therefore, since they never last, because it changes, so and it never lasts, so therefore there's a sense of wanting to re-experience that experience again. And so there's sense of dissatisfaction, sense of discontent, wanting more and more. And that feeling of discontent, dissatisfied, is miserable suffering. Why are we dissatisfied and discontent? Because we are unable to experience that continuously, because that lasted only a few moments, it's gone, that experience. And so that lead to that. And so that is why, the samsaric pleasure are in a way the suffering of change for all this reasoning. That is why it's called suffering of change. It change or it lead to suffering at the end. So we experience that quite often. We experience that more than experience the suffering of pain. But we do not experience that also, suffering of change 24 hours. We don't experience that 24 hours. Then the suffering of the all-pervasive is the one that we experience 24 hours, all the time. While you are sleeping, while you are awake, whether you are awake, whether you are sleeping, whether you are healthy, whether you are unhealthy, whether you have good relationship, whether you have bad relationship, whether you have financial security, whether you don't have financial security, whether you are educated, not educated, it doesn't matter. Everyone experiences all the time. Not only all the human beings, all sentient beings within the 6 realms experience that suffering of all pervasive all the time. And that is also the word used, all pervasive. Is pervasive is because it is experienced by all sentient beings within the all 6 realms. The suffering of pain might not be experienced by all sentient beings within the 6 realms. Suffering of change also might not be experienced by the all sentient beings within the 6 realms, but this third suffering is experienced by all sentient beings of 6 realms. And also in terms of time, is pervasive because everyone experiences that all the time. And what that means, the suffering of pervasive is, our own aggregates, our own body, our own mind, are a result of karma and delusions. Your own aggregates being the result of karma and the delusions, your own aggregates being under the control or the influence of the karma and delusion, that is self-suffering. Because your existence, your rebirth, your aggregates is, slave and prisoner of the delusion karma. So when you are a prisoner and slave of someone, that is a suffering. That is why no one wants to go to this prisons. That is why no one, delightfully, no one delightfully, joyfully want to go to the prisons. Because they don't have freedom. They have to follow others. They can't do what they want. And that is what also slave, you have no freedom. You are under total control of someone. And that is why being slave and being prisoner is a suffering, painful. And so, again, if we really check it, are we prisoner and slave of our delusion karma or not? We have to think about it. We are, we are. Our life is driven by our mind. Our mind is driven by the delusions at the moment, at present situations. Of course, you can free yourself from the karma and delusions. You can free, but at this point, when you are in samsara, you have not been able to free that, and therefore you are totally under their influence, control, and being slave and prisoner of them. And so that is what is called the suffering of pervasive. And so that one we experience 24 hours. 24 hours, 24 hours, our aggregates, ourself is, always, that is why, why even when we want to be kind, sometimes we become upset. You want to be kind to your friends, families. We all, of course, we want to be kind and nice to everyone, especially we want to be kind and nice to our friends and family. Despite that, sometimes we become unkind. We act unkindly. Why? Because in that moment, the delusion overtook us. One of the delusions kind of overran us, and we have no control. If we have the control, we will not allow that anger to arise. We will not give any space for that anger. But the anger was more stronger than us in our mind in that moment. And so that's how we have no control, over them. Instead, they have control, While we are enjoying, they come and destroy our enjoyment. Do you get it? Having a good time with your friends, everything, suddenly, and you want to have a good time, and suddenly one of those delusion will just take over us, and then it totally destroy our enjoyment. It totally ruin our party, all family things, friends. That is, we never know when that delusion going to come, We never know what karma is going to manifest. Do you get it? We just hope and pray one of the bad karma doesn't manifest. That is all we can do at this point. We can hope, pray, and we can do some purifications, and we hope that purification is able to clear all of them, and we will pray one of the negative karma will not manifest, but we cannot guarantee. It could manifest anytime, and life could go up and down, change everything like that. It has already happened in our life so many times. It continue to happen, and it will continue as long as we are not free from the delusion and karma. As long as we are not free from the karma, we don't know what karma will manifest anytime. We don't know our health situation, karmic health situations. What are they waiting, and how that can manifest anytime? And we feel very healthy now, and suddenly things could change, And that is same with everything's our karma. And so that just shows then we have no control over the karma at this point. Karma and the delusions is the one who is running, And that is the case for all sentient beings. So that is why it said, ceasingly tormented by the three sufferings, by the three suffering all the time. One of them all the time, 24 hours, to others sometime, thinking that all mothers are in such conditions. So thinking that all mother sentient beings are in such condition, such situations, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So when you think about them, by taking time, to really reflect, contemplate with each of the points here Lama Tsongkhapa make, and go and take time to contemplate and think about that, then you begin to see, how all mother sentient beings are in such conditions, such a, miserable conditions, painful and endless, such a painful, endless condition and situation. When you feel it, when you understand, realize that, then you will feel their pain. And when you feel their pain, then compassion will arise, sense of unbearable to see and feel that pain of others. Unbearable, feeling of that unbearable, when you see your child, like the mothers who see their child experience the pain, they can't stop but not to think about their well-being, and they can't stop from thinking how to free them from their pain. Same way, just as the mother will feel that way, how can I relieve the suffering and pain of my child? What is there anything? Is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do to reduce and relieve of their pain and suffering? That feeling just comes naturally when you see their pain. That comes just naturally. Same way, that is how when you feel others' pain like that way, then compassion would arise. And through that compassion, then we generate the bodhicitta mind. So that is the way. And His Holiness Dalai Lama shares, he said he used these meditations to develop renunciation, saying, instead of all mother sentient beings, thinking that all mother sentient are in such conditions, thinking that I'm in that conditions, So thinking yourself in that conditions and feeling that pain, suffering, miserable, unbearable, and then cultivating the wish to free from that endless suffering and cause of the sufferings. When you do that, then it helps you to generate renunciation. And when you think about that towards other sentient beings, then it helps you to develop compassion and bodhicitta mind. So again, as it says, generate thinking that all mothers are in such conditions. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, in terms of the different method for the meditation here is mainly the method of 7 point of cause and effect. And whatever method meditation you use for your practice meditation to cultivate the bodhicitta mind, as I mentioned, 2 or 3 different methods. Before you start any of those actual meditation, first you need to meditate on equanimity towards all sentient beings. So that is the kind of the foundations for all 3 different methods. Equanimity, first you need to develop equanimity. Because if you don't develop equanimity, then it will be very difficult to develop bodhicitta and great compassion to all sentient beings. If you don't have equanimity, then you have discriminating mind, liking some people, disliking some others. It will be easy to develop compassion for those you like, but it will be very difficult to those whom you dislike. So then to develop compassion to everyone means that you try to develop compassion to everyone, whether you agree with them or whether you don't agree with them, whether you have difference with them or whether you don't have difference with them, you know, whether you like them, whether you dislike them, whether they are kind people or whether they are mean people, you have to be able to feel compassion on everyone then. And without equanimity, it is very difficult to feel that, isn't it? At the moment, and there are certain individuals, whether it is on a personal level or whether it is in general, in certain leaders around the world, where people struggle to feel compassion for them, isn't it? Even though they have no problem to feel compassion for the victim, they struggle to feel compassion for the perpetrators, because we have this kind of discriminating mind at this point, you know. And so therefore, in order to develop compassion for everyone, loving kindness, compassion for everyone, because without that feeling loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings, you cannot develop bodhicitta mind. You cannot develop bodhicitta mind. In order to develop bodhicitta mind, you should have great compassion. Great compassion meaning being compassionate to everyone, every sentient being without any exclusions. And in order to be able to expand your love and compassion to every sentient being, then the equanimity is very important foundations. Equanimity is very important foundations. So that you can, so when you do the next point of the meditation to develop bodhicitta, then they become stable and good. If you don't have a good foundation of equanimity, then your next practice meditation will not be as stable. Your realization will be not stable. So cultivating the equanimity is important. So that is the first meditations, you know. And of course, there are many different way to cultivate the equanimity. You know, the meditation of equanimity by thinking, contemplating, meditating from many different point of view. Why we need to cultivate equanimity, you know. One of them, you know, is, you know, we can think, you know, we all sentient beings are in this world or in this world for a very short time, you know, because within very short time, everyone will be gone. We all who are in this planet at this moment, within next 100 years, most of them, except for those who are just born today, or 1-2 years, maybe some of them might live a little bit longer than 100 years. But other than that, most of all 6 billion people now in the world will be gone by 100 years, definitely by 110 years. So even if everyone live 100 years, still that 100 years is such a short time in relation to the time, you know. 100 is nothing, like 1 second within the time frame when we talk the time. So in such short time, it doesn't make sense to have such a discriminating mind and to feel so attached to some and to have such a strong aversions, to have such a strong attachment to some and to have such a strong aversions and anger and hatred to some others. It doesn't make sense. We all are, you know, here, you know, like a traveler on the way for a very short period. And there's no point of fighting, arguing with each others, you know. Like when, you know, you can see that mentality, for example, in generally, you know, when you are on vacations, when people are on vacations, people are much more nicer. Have you noticed that? You know, when people are vacation, when people are hiking, when people are walking, they are much more nicer. They are much more kind to each. Even you don't know each, even you don't know the people. People say hi. You know, people waves. You know, people are willing to talk, engage. People are much more nicer and kinder in that. You know, vacations like that. So similarly, you know, recognizing we are just on a vacation for a short travel, you know, for a short time. So therefore, it doesn't make sense and point to be so attached because we are going to be separated. So there's no point to be so strongly attached because we are going to be separated. We are here all for a short period. And also there is no reason to be so strong aversion and anger because we are also here very short for a very short period. So we do that kind of meditation practice, thinking of impermanent and fragility of our everyone's life, and you know that we all are like a traveler or for a very short period, and therefore it doesn't make any sense, reasonable, to have that kind of so strong discriminating mind. Through that, and we'll try to develop more sense of more equanimity towards everyone, sense of more equanimity towards everyone, you know. Also, we can think, you know, everything changes. Nothing is permanent, you know. Our people, which we are very attached to, now can change into a way we become the object of our aversions, anger, hatred. That people or any sentient beings who are object of our anger, aversion, anger, and hatred, they could become object of attachments. Everything is possible. Everything is possible. Our mind changes, their mind changes. Our view changes, their view changes. Our karma changes, their karma changes. So when there's all this, there's possibility of all that changes. When karma changes, our relationship changes from being close to being distant, from being distant to close. That changes because there is change in the karma. And there's always that possibility to change that karma anytime. Also, you know, there's always possible to change our view and our minds. You know, we change our views and minds sometimes a couple of times in a week, sometimes a couple of times in a day about so many different issues. So that being the case, you know, our taste of life could change. Our view of life could change. Our view of that person could change. Our view of that person's action could change. Same, that persons would change as well. Not because they want to change, it just comes natural because that is the impermanent nature of, that is, you know, we can't stop that from changing, you know. I don't want to have my mind kind of being in, you know, dilemma, you know, not being able to make decisions in many things, but I can't stop. It just comes. Sometimes I think it's good to do. Sometimes it's not good to do. You can't. So those changes just come. You don't, not just because you want. You know, your mind, your view, things could changing. And so if that's the cases, everything could change. And therefore, again, when that is the case, when everything could change, to hold such a strong attachment to some and to hold such a strong aversion and anger to some, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's not reasonable. No. It's So again, through that kind of meditation, through that kind of reflection, then again, we try to practice more equanimity, more equanimity, more equanimity. When we practice equanimity, it's good for us, it's good for others. You know, it's good for us, it's good for others. It's good for everyone when there's equanimity, you know. And then from, of course, if we look from many lifetimes, you know, everyone has been our enemy at some time, and we have been had conflict, we fought, all of that. Everyone has been our most kind, caring mothers. Everyone has been our most kind, caring fathers, siblings, grandparents, friends. So they all have been at a certain time most caring friends, families, and so. In certain time, they all have been, you know, sometimes we have conflict, we have fight, we have argument, we have disagreement. It's just that, you know, we cannot remember all of them. We cannot recognize all of them, but all have been that. So since all have been same, why have so strong attachment to some, and why have such a strong aversion to others? Again, from that point of view, again, you know, we try to practice equanimity. We try to practice equanimity. You know, and then also, you know, we can think, you know, using certain image visualizations. Sometimes that is also powerful, helpful in our practice meditations. When you use certain visualizations, certain image, you know. For example, you know, you can imagine, you know, someone who is rich, who have a resource, or someone who is a, you know, doctors, you know, who can kind of what do you call relieve the persons of their their whatever problem they are having. And imagine 10 of people, 10 patients come to see the doctors, and the doctors treat some of them and doesn't want to treat some others. If you are observing from outside, how will you feel? They all are in same situations. They all want same help. They are in same situation, same self. But you see doctor helping some of them and not helping some of them, treating some of them, not treating some of them. Or someone who have resource and 10 people who have same situation, starving, you know, and they all need food, help, and then that person's help some of them and not helping some of them. So you see discrimination there. How do you feel as an observer? Do you feel it's right? Do you feel it's correct? We all feel it's unfair. We all feel it's discriminating. It's not correct. It's not right. If that is the case, that is when when you observe that, and that is exactly what we are doing now when we are discriminating. All sentient beings are suffering equally. All sentient beings are suffering equally by their karma and their delusions. And now we are treating them differently to different people. Do you get it? To some with so much attachment, to some so much anger. So if someone look from outside, are we fair? Are we fair? What we are doing is right? It's not. Just like when we see other person that we feel that person is discriminating, not doing right, not being fair. And if someone from outside look at us, that's what exactly we are doing. And again, from that point of view, again, using that kind of visualization image and then applying to ourselves. Am I doing same like them? You know? And so then we realize, oh, I'm exactly doing something unfair, discriminating, not right. And so therefore, once we have that realization, then we will work more harder to be less discriminating and more equanimity and treating others more equally. You know, a lot of time we are not even aware of that, isn't it? We don't even feel, we are not even aware of that. We don't even realize that. We don't even thought about it, and we are not even aware of that. Now you use that image, and then you reflect on yourself, and then we'll see. Then we begin to see. I'm not much different from that person's. If I allow myself to be treat others with such a discriminating mind, with being so attached to some strongly and so strong aversion to others. So through that, those different meditation, those different reflection, contemplation, through that you can use any of them that you find more powerful to feel more equanimity to all sentient beings. You use that, whatever, any of those, and you can use your own different, different reasoning, logics, different examples. You can come with your own, where it helps you to feel more equanimity to all others. The main point is to develop equanimity towards all sentient beings, and because we built that foundation of equanimity, and on the basis of that foundation equanimity, then you try to build the bodhicitta mind through the different stages of meditations. So yeah, I think maybe that is all for today. Any questions, comments, cautions from today's? I guess maybe last one might have become a little bit more critical to ourselves, but sometimes it's good to be critical. We can't be too critical all the time. That is also not healthy, being too critical all the time, whether it's with ourselves or to others. But sometimes also it's good to be critical when it is needed. And sometimes being critical will, help us to be little awakened, little awakened. And sometimes it helps us to be, inspire us to work harder, work harder. But also at the same time, you don't want that kind of critical way of thinking, that way to put yourself down and feel bad about yourself. Do you get it? Too bad about itself. It doesn't also help that too. So the point is to encourage you to change. That is the reasons to do that. Because you see in like many of the Buddhist teachings, especially you can see also Shantideva and all, sometimes it is a lot of practice, is a lot of being very critical about yourself, it is, I guess maybe it, yeah, anyway, yeah. And so, any questions, any comments? If there is, it's open. If not, yes.
Yes. Last week you talked about, and this week too, we talked about renunciation and renunciating this life completely, and then you can really do the bodhicitta. So obviously I'm still not renouncing samsara, but so the bodhicitta that I try to have is that it's the contrived bodhicitta. So then when you completely renunciate, is that when your bodhicitta goes from being contrived to real, or if that makes sense?
Yes. First of all, at the moment, the bodhicitta we're trying to practice, is not as powerful as it can be, because still we struggle with the compassion for those people, a lot of people in the world. Don't we? Even though we say, may all sentient beings be free of suffering and cause of suffering, may all sentient beings happiness or cause of happiness, I want to liberate all sentient beings from suffering and cause of suffering to enlightenment. But when you think of one individual, maybe you think, I'm not so sure about that person, we struggles. There are a lot of people in the world that we struggles to have compassions, because we see their bad attitude, bad behavior and actions, all of that, but we cannot see and feel their pain and suffering. So when you have renunciations, you will feel pain and suffering of all sentient beings, because with relying that, as we especially talking about the third suffering, because everyone is going through that suffering. And when you in that suffering is such a pain and unbearable, then you also see that person's also in that situation, that conditions, and then you feel their pain. You see and you feel their pain unbearable, and then that will open your mind to feel compassion for them. Even if you don't agree with their behavior and their attitude and action, but you see their suffering, you feel for them, and then that will allow you to feel compassion. And when you have that compassion to all of them, then you can feel bodhicitta towards all sentient beings. So that is why bodhicitta renunciation is crucial to bodhicitta, because at the moment, our compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, all of them, which is easy when we just generalize, but when we try to go each sentient being, then we have a blockage, then there's the wall, there's the wall, many walls. So that is why our bodhicitta does not become as real, true bodhicitta as we want to develop. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we can do the dedications. Yeah. Due to the merits of this virtuous action, may I quickly gain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arise and grow, and may that which is arise and not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to all the past, present, future merits collected by me and all the merits of 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existence from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existence from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existence from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existence from their own side to that state, which is completely empty of existence from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existence from my own side. Jigde kamde pende malu ba kangle chungwe sambe yishe no kadin chungme tinjin gyatso la sowa deso tuje lundu sho. Tubzu changshin jangwen jawe ten jin jang pewe kunso tokoro zu choksun kuwe le mo tudu ba daso du jegwen du shakten sho. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geshe-la.
See you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you.
you.
Ciao.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you.
Good night.